Hi there, this is my second vlog. I'd like to bring y'all up to speed because I've had a lot of stuff transpire in the last couple weeks. I didn't really plan my first vlog because I didn't really plan on having a YouTube channel at all, so that was just sort of a mailbag, and this is also just sort of a mailbag. I'm shooting from my new workbench, which I just built. I might do a short video on how that process went, although I got a new camcorder which turned out to be a turkey, so I lost a lot of video from that process. So I've received a bunch of stuff from eBay purchases in the last couple weeks, and definitely the clear winner as far as interest is the Sinclair ZX Spectrum 128K plus 2. You'll notice I say ZX Spectrum, not ZX. That's the British pronunciation of the letter Z, so I don't pronounce it that way. This is an early 80s home computer. You can tell from run, load. This is a sort of a British Commodore 64, but earlier, I think, and less advanced, fewer colors, and much more reduced graphics capability compared to the Commodore 64. But the ZX Spectrum was extremely popular, and there was an enormous number of games for it, so I was interested in trying it out because for a while there were a lot of, I don't know if I'd say high profile, but there were a lot of developers making games for this platform that an awful lot of people liked, so I figured if they liked them, I can probably like them too. And so far I found a couple that I enjoy on emulators and whatnot, so I figured I'd give it a shot. So I picked this up on eBay, and I'd like to do some videos of it. The primary issue with it was getting power into it, which has been an adventure in and of itself. Also, getting video out of it has been an adventure. Just going to give you a quick preview of what I'm up to. You'll notice on the back here a bunch of weird connectors. I mean, you recognize any of these? Like the power supply is this bizarre 6-pin DIN. 6-pin. And it uses all of them. There's 12 and 5 volts in there, so I had to use the original power supply. I could have made my own, but that's a huge pain. These are British, well, I guess you can't call them registered jacks, but they're British phone jacks, so they're much like ours, except that they have a clip on the side, so they're much thinner. I'd almost say that's a better design, but it's probably got pros and cons. But now things get interesting. RGB Paratel and TV are how you get your video out. And TV is an RCA jack, so you'd think that'd be composite. And this is a British computer, so you'd think it'd be PAL composite. And for a lot of people that'd be a problem, but I have a Sony PVM monitor, so I can take PAL. But this isn't PAL baseband video. This is a RF modulated video. This is like channel 3 or 7 or whatever is common in Britain at that time. So this is useless to me. I definitely have nothing that will decode PAL RF, PAL UHF video. That's a non-starter. I can maybe buy something, but that's just getting into more and more trouble. This port here outputs RGB, not composite video. There's no composite video anywhere on this thing. There's no baseband video support at all. There simply is no way to get a yellow plug out of it. The primary issue was that the power supply it comes with, which for reasons I'll probably explain later, I wanted to keep rather than replacing, runs off of 240 volts and takes a British 240 volt plug. I hadn't, obviously no 220 in my house, so I had to get a step-up transformer. So here's that. That's your, I mean, if you're familiar with step-up transformers, it is what it is. Okay, it's nothing exciting. It takes, it's designed for either US, for bi-voltage devices, I guess, or for the EU bi-pin. So I got a converter from US to that UK standard with the big fat pins on it. And I actually had a bit of an adventure with this because at first I thought that this was the output voltage, so I had this jumper up here in the 220, which meant it was actually outputting 50 volts out the other side. Oops. So I was having some strange behavior from that. So I moved it to 110, now everything's hunky-dory. Alright, so the problem with one of these is that they convert your voltage quite effectively. This will convert 110 volts up to 220. The problem is that it doesn't change frequency. British Power runs at 50, we run at 60. And my understanding was that for a lot of purposes, for a lot of computers and televisions, game consoles and stuff, that's a problem because the timing for the internal CPU runs off the line. So if you have 50 hertz, then the CPU runs slower. And if you have 60 hertz, it runs faster. So that would mean that a British computer would run a couple percent faster off of 60 hertz here. So that bugged me, and I thought, well, let's search around, go to Amazon maybe, and get a converter that does frequency as well. And I started looking around, because I was at Fry's at the time, and I started looking around trying to find a converter for both voltage and frequency, and couldn't find one. And it took me about 10 minutes before I realized, oh, I'm an idiot. Here's the power supply, which I like. You know, I'd like to retain it for a lot of reasons, but I particularly, I like that it's custom. Yeah, it's a big nasty brick, and the switching supply would be much smaller. But I like that it's an actual Sinclair power supply with that nice red text on it. I'll never mistake it in the closet, right? And so here's your big fat nasty UK power connector. By the way, a little trivia for you. This connector was installed by the user. This is an aftermarket power plug. And the reason is because in the 80s, I think all the way up into the 90s, maybe it's still going on, British power connectors weren't standardized, I think is what I've been told. And so as a result, things wouldn't come with a power connector on them. They would come with just bare wires, and you were expected to put the connector on yourself. So this has instructions in the manual for putting your own connector on it. So this, I guess an average British household would have had a drawer full of these things, and you just open it up and screw the wires down probably and put it together. It also has a fuse. I think every British power plug has to have a fuse, but don't quote me on that. Not a bad standard. So there's your AC input. And then, well, there's your output. That awful thing, right? If we flip this over, and we just take a cursory glance, that's main supply 220/240 DC output. I spent all my time worrying about frequency. It's a DC power supply. There's no frequency going into that. It's DC. Yeah, I felt dumb about that. This thing has its own quartz oscillator. There's no timing issue. But there's an interesting dead end water to this story. Later, the same day, I drive over to Goodwill, and I find this. Now, this is a fairly ordinary automotive power inverter. So it takes 12 volts DC, and it gives you high voltage out of it to run your laptop or whatever. But notice, Chinese, which you don't normally see on these things, even if they do come from China. This one was probably sold in China. Indeed. 220. 50 hertz. So this runs off of 12 volts. So I could just get myself a 12 volt DC power supply, anyone in the world, and cut the end off and plug it in here, and I get my 220, 50 hertz. So I bought this for $6. So I feel fairly silly spending $29 on this one that doesn't even do the frequency that I want, when I could have gotten the other one for $7, including a power supply, and gotten the frequency I wanted and everything. But I also didn't want to rely on it. These are just a iron cord transformer and copper windings and done. So there's not much room for error in those. Those other guys, those inverters could fail in a million ways. So I just didn't want the trouble. This next item is kind of mundane, I suppose, but I like it, and I think maybe somebody else will too. It's a clock radio, but this is a special type. You'll notice that this is right side up, but the speaker's on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that there. The reason is, this is an under cabinet radio. This goes in your kitchen. There's a little bracket that goes on here, screws up into the bottom of your cabinet, and you've got a stereo in the kitchen that doesn't take up much space. So that's why the speaker on the bottom, it shoots down, because the top's going to be up against the cabinet. So you know, I'm not a radio guy as such, but I do like interesting radios. Once in a while I find one that I dig. I got a boombox a while back that I outfitted with a 1/4-inch jack, and I'll be putting Bluetooth in it soon. And I was thinking to myself, I should start buying up these old radios, putting Bluetooth in them and selling them to people who want a nice, high quality 70s or 80s stereo system with no, without the outdated connectivity. So I figured, yeah, maybe someone would like an under cabinet stereo. So I went ahead and picked this up, and it works. Let me fix that for you. You don't want to see that. There we go. Let's make it a nice. There we go. 112. That's a nice time in the morning to be doing all this. So this one has some interesting qualities. One of them is it has a built-in timer, and I hate it. It's actually a terrible timer. Maybe put your hands over your ears. Now, I don't know if my phone automatically adjusted the volume when I hit that, but this thing is deafening, and it emits a constant tone. If I hadn't turned that off, it would have continued screaming for as long as I left it. So, what's interesting about this is there's only one way to set the timer. It's by setting it off. You have to press this, you have to press the timer button, and then the time set button. And then it starts at 2 hours, counts back. This thing is really, really strange. But that works, and it's more convenient than an egg timer in a lot of cases. And it's more convenient than Hey Siri, Hey Siri, Hey Siri, Hey Siri, Hey Siri. The other interesting quality this has is on the side, we have an appliance outlet. And this appliance outlet is actually controlled by a relay. So that's a 110 volt outlet, which you can control with these buttons. I don't know if you can hear that. Auto. The purpose of auto is that you can set a time of day that this will turn on at. The reason being, you can set this up so that at a certain time of day your coffee machine comes on and starts brewing coffee. So I thought that was a pretty cute trick. I hate the modern electronics market. You can't buy anything interesting. This is an interesting piece of equipment, and the equivalent currently being sold is, I think maybe Bose sells something like this, but nobody respectable. And this is small, and it looks great. This is a styling machine. I mean, take a look. If you look at the front, see it's got that nice angle to it. It's it's not 45 degrees. It's not flat. It's angled for a person looking down at it. I also like this 1980s style. It's not a volume knob, loudness. And stereo won't come across very well, but I'll turn it on for you. It sounds pretty good. Oh, Assemblage 23. Or I'd like to stick around and leave that going, but I have a video to shoot, so I picked this up at RePC, which is Seattle's local electronics junk shop, and sometimes terribly boring and sometimes wonderful. Then I went down the street, I went to Goodwill, and at the Goodwill, I picked up, well, I got another one. This one is considerably more primitive. It doesn't have the appliance outlet, and it just looks older and worse. And it doesn't have a tone knob. There's just a FM AM, which on the other one was done digitally, and tuning and volume. And it has the timer, which I haven't tested, but it doesn't have the appliance outlet. But what you're probably noticing is it does have, what's this? Well, let me show you what that is. Yeah, that's right. It has a tape deck that pops out the front. Hey, that makes perfect sense. Bose started making CD players that mounted under your cabinet and selling those on TV directly in the 90s or 2000s. So obviously this is a sensible design decision, but I still think it's cute, especially because what's interesting about this is that it will run with it open like that. Let me plug it in for you. One of my favorite features about that, one of my favorite design decisions, I should say. Oops. Sorry. One of my favorite design decisions with this device is actually that the tape door, which is a little finicky, listen closely. Hear that? It's locked in place. You can't close it because when you're going to put a tape in here, you don't want it sliding back away from you. So this makes a lot of sense. But if we hit, here's play. It's running. And it's got good torque too. If I try to stall it, I can feel that the spindle starts slipping, but it doesn't have that belt slip feel, and it's not whining or anything. So I think this is in pretty good condition. I haven't tried playing a tape, but I have a tape to play, so let's put that in and see what it sounds like. Alright, I've got a cassette, and let's see what it sounds like. I gotta flip this up because otherwise the speaker is covered up by what it's sitting on. So I'm gonna turn this down. Oh, that's stiff. I need to clean that up. Okay, here we go. I think it might be at the end of the tape. Yeah, I think it is. Oh, we're at the beginning.
Yo, G, this beat is kicking.
Whoa! Alright, so there's a lot going on with this thing. The when you're playing, the audio quality is not great. It's very muffled. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have tone control. So I think they just picked a median point and called that good. And it's a great big speaker, so I don't know why it sounds so muffled. It could be an electronics issue, or it could be this thing was just never very good. But when you hit fast forward while playing, it makes this terrifying crunching noise. In fact, listen closely when I hit play. There's some 60 hertz ground hum. So there's something about the tape circuitry that was either never very good or is not good right now. But also, let's try fast forward and reverse. Okay, well, they're not making the noise now, so maybe that was just a transitory thing. Anyway, it's you know, it's a gadget. It's not particularly relevant to have tape in this day and age. Oh, there we go. But I just love that this thing is this self-contained, completely self-contained tape. I mean, let's try it. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, that's really a trip if you ask me. Let's see what the timer sounds like. Yeah, see, this is maybe a later version because this one starts out at 59, presumably minutes, yes, instead of going off instantly. So I think they learned their lesson the first time around. So let's, whoops, let's see what the timer sounds like. I'll cut this part. Oh, yeah. Oh, General Electric. They're both General Electric, and I think that's, I don't know. I might end up being a General Electric radio collector. I don't know. I can see that being somewhere I would end up because they seem to make an awful lot of interesting stuff. So upcoming, I expect to be doing a video where I build a RGB to mini DIN adapter cable for the Spectrum, and also I should be demonstrating this guy on an oscilloscope to see how disgusting the output from it is. And also I hope to be taking apart the Sony MSX that I have here, which is not on the camera because it's a great big behemoth I can't bring over here without great notice and reason, because it has a bent keyboard, and I hope to bend the frame for that back into shape. I'm thinking the insides of that should be pretty entertaining. So, hope you're looking forward to what's coming up, and I'll try to get them up as soon as I can now that I actually have a place to make them.